Well, I am delighted to say that joining me on the Godcast today is Ross King MBE. And Ross probably doesn't need much introduction. He's very well known as being on the telly, Scottish TV presenter, actor, writer, LA correspondent for Lorraine and Good Morning Britain. And of course, I'm sure a proud moment, which we'll talk about hopefully, is Ross, who was honoured with the MBE in 2018 for his services to broadcast in the arts and charity. So Ross, it's absolutely brilliant to get you on the Godcast. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, Alex. Yeah, what an introduction. No, I definitely need an introduction. And of all the ones I've had, that was the most recent. So it was very good. It was good. Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Great. Well, let's start with the big news of the day on the television. Megan McKenna is joining the Celebrity MasterChef. Oh, no, not that. Harry and Meghan and good old Piers Morgan. And,
yeah.
And we just had a very brief word before we started recording. It's been a busy time for you.
It has been crazy. I mean, I'm very fortunate to work at all. But obviously when huge stories like this break, I've been, what have I done today? I've done obviously British TV. So Good Morning Britain, Lorraine. Then we did Australia, Channel 7. Then we did two of the stations out here in San Diego. Then we did radio in Scotland for Go Radio. And I've got 3 more TVs to do today. And then Lorraine tonight, my time here in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But it's wonderful. Again, as I said, I mean, I genuinely do mean I am very lucky, very fortunate to be working. And we know with the situation all over the world, people just devastated. So, anything that I can do at the moment, as my dear old dad used to say from Glasgow, every day above the grun is a good one.
Very true. Very true. Ross, can I ask? I've got to ask this because it's just on my mind. Do you get kind of the email from GMTV saying, say as little as possible? Because I just want to ask you, what's your thoughts? I mean, Piers is very much chalk and cheese kind of character, isn't he? I like him in small doses. I can't sit and watch him for 2 hours. 20
minutes. A whole one.
What's your take on it? You must have known him for years and years.
Yeah, I've known Piers for a long, long time. Piers is a great dinner companion because he's got so many wonderful stories, as you can imagine, over the years, and he's got some great stories that obviously that he couldn't ever tell on air. So it's great to hear them when you're at dinner with them. And, I've considered him a pal. We've had great banter over the years. We've had, great dinners out here in LA as well. He really shook things up, and that's Piers is very much his MO, isn't it? He comes in, he shakes things up. And that's what he's certainly done. And in the world of breakfast television, especially, he's really, shaking things up. So I think from Piers's point of view, just maybe now, well, from what I've read, I haven't spoken to him. I just think that he's obviously thought, well, I can have done that now. It's quite a long time that he's been there. What is it? Something like 6 years now that he's been on the show with Susanna. So I think everything has at some point, as we all know, things do come to an end, and I think for him, he's probably just thinking, what, I've got to that point now. I've sort of said all that I want to do, and then just time to move on.
What's your gut instinct in terms of replacing Piers? Do you think ITV will? Well, I'm not sure you can go like for like with Piers Morgan, but do you think?
Do you think
they'll go?
It's going to be. I mean, I'd love to be I'd love to be a fly in the wall. To hear the talks that are going on, which obviously, I'm not ever way above my pay grade, but it would be interesting to hear just what they're thinking. Again, as you say, do you go for someone like that? Do you go for something completely different? I mean, I think with all these things, there's merits in absolutely everything, isn't there? You could argue either way. So I think I'm very fortunate that with me being in Los Angeles, I'm kind of away from it all, and I'm in a little bubble here up to a point. So it's great that I don't really get involved in things too much. And sometimes I'm hearing things, like with Piers, I just read it online as most people did. You know, so I was getting phone calls from friends going, "Is this true?" And I'm saying, "Well, I don't know. I've just read it online as well." So in many respects, it is quite nice just to be a little bit removed from it all, and again to just look at it, the outside looking in and going, "Wow, what's going to happen?"
Yeah. Ross, let's take a little trip down memory lane, because you're there in your beautiful home in Los Angeles, but you're a Glasgow boy, is that right?
Yep, born and bred in Glasgow. Yep, Clyde built, as we used to say. I was a kid. I worked at the radio station, and it was Radio Clyde, and that was a thing that our boss at the time used to always say, "You're Clyde built," and you know, like the ship, like the ships. But thankfully, I haven't sunk yet, so that's.
And was it a happy childhood? You got good,
so far.
You got good memories of being a kid in the.
Oh,
Glasgow?
Lovely. Yeah. I mean, again, I think we all have those memories of summers just being endless. And, you know, how on earth I actually think that we had a summer in Glasgow that lasted 7 or 8 weeks. I mean, that's just ridiculous. So, I mean, it's like, where did that come from? As a child, did I visualize this idyllic summer? But having said that, we used to go to the Isle of Wight a lot on holiday.
Right.
And it's funny that with Mom and Dad, we never had, you know, a trip to Europe or anything. Everything was all around the UK. So I always think of, you know, my summer holidays being in places like, you know, Paynton and Torquay and Bournemouth and Great Yarmouth and the Isle of Wight and all these places. And it was great to go and see all around that wonderful, you know, coastline. And then also in Scotland to go to places like St Andrews and Nairn, which is weird. And here's the weirdest thing. In Nairn, I met Charlie Chaplin.
Yeah, I was reading that.
Yeah, and it's just the weirdest thing that I still, even when I talk about it, I just go, "Oh my goodness me, I met." I mean, I was only, I don't know, 5, something like that, but I vividly remember it and vividly thinking, "Why has this man not got a bowler hat and a little moustache?"
What was he doing? Was he there on promo, or was he just on the beach?
He was on holiday, yeah, with his wife, and they were walking along the beach. I remember, this is weird as well, because you know how sometimes, I was interested, I was watching something the other day, and someone was talking about your memories, but your memory is a memory of a memory of a memory of a memory. So it's interesting how that you can say, well, did that really happen? Or is that's my memory of the latest memory that I had of it. Sounds like I'm getting into like a Christopher Nolan movie here. But it is a little bit like that. And, you know, I do remember my mom just going, "Hey, look, it's Charlie Chaplin." And again, as a kid, because I'd seen Charlie Chaplin, I remember that. Maybe I was a little bit older then. Anyway, I digress in a Ronnie Corbett kind of way. Yeah. And now Barbara Dixon. That's a good one for the kids. And now Barbara Dixon. So yeah, I just remember thinking he should be this man with a stick and the mustache and the bowler hat. But he did. I remember he had a big black coat on, big thick coat, because it was the summer in Nairn.
I've been there in Nairn.
Like a sort of Hornberg, is that the name of the hat? Anyway, I just remember that. And it was twilight, so it was almost like a scene from, I think people remember the movie Local Hero, just with the end of the sun just glistening on the water. And it was a magical moment. And then for me, the thing that made it even more special was then when I got older, I started collecting memorabilia. Just always done it since I was a kid. And I said to my mom, "Oh, can you imagine if I'd had Charlie Chaplin's autograph?" And she said, "Aunt Betty's got it." And I went, "What?" No. And she said, "Yeah, he was at the Glasgow Empire in 1930 something or whatever. And Aunt Betty was a kid." And I was like, "Really?" And ask her. So I went to ask Aunt Betty, and Aunt Betty said, "Yes, I've got it." And it was in a drawer in her sideboard, you know, like away at the back. You know how, like now, Michael McIntyre always says it, you know, we have the man drawer where you've got the old AA batteries and they just seem to reproduce. And then you've got the old currency, and then you've got the key to the side gate of the house that you've never visited and all that stuff. And she just pulled it out. And so it was this beautiful pencil autograph of Charlie Chaplin, which I have got and framed and all the rest of it. So childhood memories, very, very fond memories. No back, incredible. I mean, I think so lucky to be brought up in such a loving family as well.
Yeah. Was there a religious side upbringing in your family? Ross, being from Glasgow, which side of the faith?
Well, you see, it's interesting. And again, so obviously, people will know Rangers, Celtic, very much like Protestant, Catholic, that whole thing. And I was brought up to be, and I was, a Partick Thistle supporter. So in Glasgow, you've got Rangers, you've got Celtic, and then this little team, Partick Thistle. As Billy Connolly always called them, their full title, Partick Thistle 0. It's always Rangers 3, Partick Thistle 0. Celtic 3, Partick Thistle 0. So they were my childhood dream, and I went to them as a schoolboy to play for them and things like that. But brought up, I mean, I always remember being a Partick Thistle supporter, so I don't think of anything else. But yeah, certainly from the religious side of things, Dad, Salvation Army. He was the choir leader, the songster leader, played in the band, conducted the band, did a lot of the sermons. And then my mum was Church of Scotland and played the piano. So it was very much a musical background. But Sundays were Sunday morning was Sunday school at church. Sunday afternoon was Sunday school at the Salvation Army. Right. So yeah, so it was a huge part of my upbringing. And the funniest thing was that getting into the business, I was going to be a footballer, and that was kind of easy. My dad was a good footballer, and I thought, well, this is what I will do, until I discovered that I wasn't very good. But the interesting thing was that with Dad was that then when I said I wanted to go into like show business, and Dad was very much like, and Mum was saying, we don't know Coco the Clown, so we don't know how to get you into this. Anyway, jumping way ahead, when I was out here and I was working for KTLA, big station here in Los Angeles, the Salvation Army here in Pasadena, which is a huge corps, then I must have said something on television one day, and they were like, oh my goodness me, Salvation Army, would you come and host an event? And I was thinking, sure. So I was going to do the event, and I was thinking, I'm hosting it, and I'm thinking, well, what jokes do I do? What do I do? And then it came to me, of course, that Dad did all these sermons, but he would always put jokes in it. And he would have, he'd have great, even at times slightly irreverent jokes. He would say that, how he met my mum. She was a page 3 girl in the War Cry, which for those people who don't know is that like the Salvation Army's sort of little newspaper. And then he would have such great fun and jokes about a religious horse and things like that. And so what I did was I just channeled my dad that night and just said, these were all the jokes that I grew up hearing my dad tell on stage. And it's funny to think that going into this business, I never thought of the family were in show business, but there was my dad on stage hosting events, doing jokes, and you go, da-da!
Yeah. So is that kind of spiritual side stayed with you, Ross?
Yeah, very much so. I still have, faith. Yeah. I don't attend church, or indeed the Salvation Army, or, it's, and that was, I think that was such a great thing with Mum and Dad, was that they were very much, they brought me up, they taught me right from wrong, but it wasn't rammed down my throat, and it was, when my sister Elaine and I, when we got older, it was very much like, now your choice, you don't need to go to Sunday school, or you can do whatever you want, and we'd like you still to have faith, but you don't need to go to church. You don't need to go to Salvation Army. You can do whatever you want. So I always remember that very vividly. That which I thought was such a lovely thing.
Very good. Glad to hear it. And the radio stuff took off for you quite young, didn't you? You're only a young bloke, weren't you, when that happened?
Yeah, Alex, I was so young. I was just lucky when I was at school. Again, there was the whole football thing, and then we had, you know, little bits of the acting, and then hospital radio. There was a wonderful maths teacher I had called Roddy Hood, who in turn knew another maths teacher called Mrs. Lawson, and Mrs. Lawson's son. He was in hospital radio, and Roddy said to me, "I think this is a good way to get into the business." And so that was it. So I went along to hospital radio. I was 15. I think I was 15. Yeah, it's 15 or 16. And went along. And what was funny was that they put me in a studio and they said, "Well, you've got quite a nice voice." And I was like, "Thank you." And it said, "Have you ever thought about being a DJ?" And I thought, never given it a thought at all. And then they put on these different records, and it was actually 45s, you know, in albums,
yeah,
and put them on. And they said, you know, so now this was also back in the day when it was very much, you know, it was very, you know, you very much like jockeying it, as we would say, you know, it was all 275 and 285, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. You know, that's the super sound, and, you know, Capital 95 point great, coming to you from the Euston Tower and all that stuff. And the idea was to do that voiceover in a record. So you hit the vocals, and they had, like, they say, right, here's a stopwatch, and yeah, you time it, and that's a 18-second intro. And I would go, actually, it's a 4-bar intro. And they would go, what? And I went, yeah, or it's 2-bar intro. And they went, what are you talking about? And I said, well, you know, I come from a musical background. I don't read music, but I know, because I've been stuck in front of as many bands at weddings, and I know the introductions to songs, and I know when they're going to sing, because that's when I would sing. So it was this weird thing. Like, they brought people, I remember bringing people into the studio going, watch this kid. And they just pull out any song, and I would do the voiceover and hit the vocals. Yeah. And they thought it was like a kind of like Harry Potter, early Harry Potter. It was just so ridiculous. Yeah. But it was this weird thing that I could hit the vocals, because I was just so used to singing.
Yeah. You're taking me back there, because I used to do hospital radio.
Oh.
Just because I loved the freedom to take my record bags into the studio and play whatever I wanted. I absolutely adored it. But you've got a great story about that I just picked up today about Wet. You gave them a real break, didn't you? Tell us about that.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, I want to talk to you about hospital radio as well, because I want to hear your stories, because we've all got these great stories of hospital radio. For people who don't know it, they broadcast sometimes the tiny little places that broadcast to just one hospital, or like HBS in Glasgow broadcast to loads of hospitals all in the Glasgow area. But we'll come back to that. But yeah, Wet. So there I was at Radio Clyde, and I was doing I threw the night show 2 till 6 in the morning, and there's a friend of mine, Andrea Miller, and we would sometimes work together. And then she said, look, I'm getting involved with this band, and would you listen to the demos, and maybe we can even think about bringing them in and all the rest of it. And so they came in. This was Wet. And I met the boys, and, you know, they came all in. I was like, hi. And then the guy at the end said, my name's Mark McLaughlin. And I went, oh, hi, Mark. And he went, but I'm going to be called Marty Pello. I was like, okay, fine. Sounds good to me. And I then played the demo in the studio, and it was a version of Stevie Wonder's Heaven Help Us All. There we are. How's that for a connection?
Ching.
It's a bing. And I played it, and I was like, wow, mate, it was great. And they were great. And I was like, wow. So then I played it on air. And then also, it's funny you're talking about hospital radio, how you could just take in your bag of records. When I was at Radio Clyde, you know, you had a playlist, you had the A list and the B list, but you could also play whatever you want. You know, you could play something from the A list and then 2 records on something from the B list, but in between you could play what you felt like. And I love that, because, you know, you look outside and go, oh, suddenly the sun's shining, you know, this will sound great, or that'll, or, you know, maybe the night before, again, this is going way back, it'd be Miami Vice, and you think everyone watched Miami Vice, and that was when it was Phil Collins, Please Take Me Home or something, and you play that and go, everyone see Miami Vice last night, and all those sort of things. And so what was great was I actually could play Wet, a demo. This is, I mean, anyone that's in, you know, radio now will go, really? And you could play demos? And I would play it in between, say, like Spandau Ballet and Duran Duran. So the younger market in Scotland and in Glasgow in the West, they would hear this and it would be like Duran Duran, Spandau Ballet, and Wet, Wet, Wet. So, you know, when it's like you're lumped in by association. So it kind of, I think it elevated them. I mean, they were brilliant and they were always going to do incredibly well. But hopefully I gave them a little help. The boys have always been so great. And in fact, when Popped In Sold Out, which was their first album, and it went triple platinum, so they then gave me a triple platinum disc, which was so lovely. So
it's a great album. Yeah. It's a great album.
Oh, isn't it? Yeah, remember it well. Yeah. All great tracks on it.
Yeah. Ross, I just want to ask you, because you broke into TV as well, and being from Burnley and Lancashire in the Northwest, there's a lot of love for Diane Oxbury, who sadly passed away. And you did was it the 8:15 from Manchester?
8:15 from Manchester, yeah. She was just, she radiated this wonderful, like with that, she had that little gentle sort of like, still the little sort of Geordie accenty Sunderlandy, it was just, there was something about that. And then she would always do this thing, she would go fun strokes, and we had such a laugh. And I remember one wonderful, we went to a premiere, and I think it was Robin Hood in London, and we went together, and I don't often wear a kilt, but I don't know why I wore a kilt. Maybe there was some Scottish connection at it. And I went in, and the man who played Robin Hood, it was a movie that didn't do that well. I think it was Patrick Bergin, the actor. And we went to the premiere, and the next day there was photographs of Di and myself at the premiere, and not Patrick Bergin. And I remember one coming back to me, said something like the PR was not happy, but there was a picture, because this is, it wasn't like that those days when, it was, celeb type pics were everywhere. It was like a kind of unusual thing and it was at the premiere, and it was Diane Oxbury and me. So, and she was a great broadcaster. Obviously she had, huge success. She stayed at the BBC in Manchester. It was funny, she was at Radio 1. She was the weather girl in the breakfast show with Simon Mayo at the time. And it was funny. I remember Mark Goodyear, who was an old mate of mine, and we were together at Radio Clyde, and he called me and he said, I know you're going to look for someone for the show. There's a really lovely girl here, can you get her an audition? And we were like, yeah, sure, of course. And that was it. And she was a natural. She was an absolute natural. And again, just
I chatted with one of the first podcasts I did was with Gordon Burns, who worked with Diane at.
My dad. Do you know that I call Gordon Burns my dad?
Is that right? Oh, I like that. I'll tweet him that.
Yes, please. Yeah, say to him, I was speaking with your son, because I did a show called Young Krypton, which was the kids' version of the Krypton Factor.
Oh, blimey.
And Gordon, at Manchester, at Granada, and Gordon was just so lovely, because you come in and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to do Young Krypton. Is there going to be a little bit of, all right, I do the real one, I do the Krypton Factor. Who's this upstart kid? I was really young at the time, and I met him, and I think Gordon, because he's such a brilliant broadcaster and a brilliant mind, he'll probably remember it better than me. But I've got a feeling when I met him, I just went, Dad, and it kind of stuck with it.
Great, I like that story. That's great. So, were you living in Manchester when all this was going on?
Yeah. I stayed there for a long time, and then I'd go. I hate to tell you this, I would go to watch Blackburn sometimes.
Thanks for coming on. And only joking, Blackburn fans are only joking.
Because Alan Yardley was one of the directors of the 8:15 from Manchester, and he was a big Blackburn fan. So I'd go and see Blackburn, and it was. So I would go and see them sometimes, and it was just a really, it was just a really great time. And Manchester, you were still, Manchester was still a little bit of that Manchester scene, and the Hacienda, and the Inspiral Carpets did the theme song for the 8:15 from Manchester. So it was a really, you know, it was like a cool time. And one of the Gallagher brothers was a roadie for the Spiral Carpets, came in when they were setting up in the studio. I mean, it's just sort of wonderful times. I such fond memories of that whole area.
I'm going to stay in the Northwest because I think you're probably the closest I'm going to get to one of my musical heroes. So you're great mates with Gary Barlow, who I am the vicar, I think, who loves Gary Barlow. I've followed Take That since I was a kid, and I've seen Take That and Gary Barlow. How did your friendship? How did that happen? Was that because he appeared on a show or something? Or
and weirdly enough, there is the handwritten lyrics to Back for Good on my wall there. What happened was that, so when I was doing the 8:15 from Manchester, Nigel, who was our manager, kept pushing this band, and nobody heard of them, but they kept pushing and pushing, and Nigel was such a great driving force behind them at that time. And it was, he would almost like just go, oh, this band, and then he would call up on a Thursday or a Friday and go, has anyone dropped out of the show? Because I've got Take That. And it almost became almost like a running joke. And so we had them on the show. And then I met the boys. And then I remember vividly, so this would be 90, something like that, 90, around about 1991. And we were at a Daily Star luncheon in London. And I was sitting with all the boys. And Gary and Mark were just going, oh, we're going to get dropped. We're going to get dropped by the label. And I was like, guys, you'll be all right. You'll get another chance. No. That's it. It's all over before it's even begun. We haven't had a hit.
Great impression, by the way.
It's not going to work, and all that stuff. Oh, thank you. And I was like, come on, guys, come on. Let's be up. Let's be positive, And then it was a bit, I do seem to remember as well going, what about a cover version? And you can see Gary going, what? This brilliant songwriter, a cover version, So we had a great time like that. And then obviously things took off massively for them. They come on the show. Then I was doing a show, Pebble Mill. They would come on at another little show at the BBC. So I would see them quite often. And then we kind of lost touch. And then I moved out here to LA in 2000. And then by complete fluke, Gary was moving out here because he was doing just all songwriting then and producing and working with other acts. And so we bumped, I can't even remember, it was at the airport, bumped into each other and then kept in touch. And, it was a weird period for Gary in his life, which I understand it completely now. I didn't so much then because to me, like if someone's your mate, they're your mate. It doesn't matter whether they're successful, not successful, whatever, and Gary was going through a very difficult period in his life, which he's talked about a lot in his book. So it was an interesting time, but I think that what was lovely about that was that it probably brought us closer together because it wasn't too sort of show busy, for want of a better description, Alex, that we would just, it was like, oh, it's Gary and Gaz.
Yeah.
And that was it. So, and we've stayed, great pals. He's been a great pal to me. And, we had a lot of laughs many laughs over the years.
That's nice to hear. That's really nice to hear, Ross. Are you surprised his talent hasn't quite been recognized in America?
Well, I think it could, and it still could. And indeed, it has been in many ways more behind the scenes than probably people realize. But, again, for Take That, they had, one big hit over here. But in fairness to the boys, it's like, one of the boys did say one time, I can't be. And I understand that because it's a lot of work, to crack America, and especially nowadays. It used to be like, say, in Spandau's days and Duran Duran's. Not that I'm saying it was easy for them, but if True was a number one in Britain, people out here wanted to hear what was number one in Britain, and so invariably it probably became a hit. Whereas now, and Ed Sheeran will testify to this, if you want to make it big here, you've got to come out, you've got to go around the radio stations, like Ed would go around all these stations, and they would take you in not to do interviews, just to meet like program controllers and planners. And, and Ed would sit in the conference room and get out his guitar and get out his beats and his loops and all the rest of it. And then people go, oh, yeah, oh, that's good. Well, next time round and all that stuff. So you've really, unless something, say, if you take, for example, One Direction, social media coming along and the planets aligning, and that a lot of the boy bands either taking a bit of a break at that time, Jonas Brothers or whatever, and then social media, and bang, that was the perfect storm.
But Ross, I'm just going to digress here, because I love my music, and I've got quite a strong sense of music. I love my Gary Barlow and I love my Take That, but I'm a huge Depeche Mode fan. And it's that's the reverse, actually. You just mentioned a few minutes ago about Pasadena. Depeche Mode never really became huge in the UK, but in America, it was just massive. And that was kind of before all the social media platforms. Well, what do you think that was? Just digressing about the music stuff a bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I've often thought that. I mean, obviously, Depeche Mode just can't get enough as a classic. That in itself was a classic pop song, in that everyone knows it. But yeah, it was weird when I came out here that when I saw, and people and Americans were like, oh, we're going to go and see this band. And I was like, Depeche Mode. I was like, oh God, I remember them. They were like, what do you mean you remember them? It's like they're gods. And I don't know. It's funny how you get I'm just desperately trying to think of another British band like that people go crazy over.
Yeah, Bush. They were called Bush, weren't they? They were big in America.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Never really. Anyway, let's get back to you. Now,
no, I'd rather talk music all day.
Well, we are going to talk music, because I am wondering if I came to see you in a show in Blackpool.
Yes.
Were you in the Cliff Richard thing?
Summer Holiday.
Were you in that in Blackpool?
I was that. I played Wallace H. Spencer, who was the agent, the American agent. Right. So yeah, I was in that in Summer Holiday. So in Blackpool, it was Darren Day, Claire Buckfield, Faith Brown, and Faith and I did the sort of, for want of a better description, the comedy double act.
Yeah, I have seen you then.
So I mean, again, it's what we're just talking about. It's so weird that I went to Vegas last weekend, and this guy came up to me, and his name was Jimmy, funny, born in Glasgow, you couldn't make it up, but was raised in Blackpool, and was the follow spot operator at the Winter Gardens in Blackpool when I was doing Summer Holiday. He was 17 at the time. Gosh. And he's gone on to a great musical career himself, which is superb. But it brought back so many happy memories. And I was just saying, again, as a kid, because, most if you're obviously in a very working class background, which is, where I come from, a council house and all that stuff, that you would go, if you were lucky, September weekend was to Blackpool or to Morecambe. And it's resonates and it sticks in your head. And, it was such a place for Scots. So to do Summer Holiday, the Cliff Richard musical, and Cliff came to see it so many times, and to do it in Blackpool. And I just remember Mum and Dad coming down, and my sister Elaine and her husband Jim, and my, my niece and nephew. And it was just, actually it was just my nephew, and Ewan wasn't born then. And, to come to Blackpool, and it was a beautiful summer. It was really, really amazing. And to do that in Blackpool was it was perfect. And, that theatre is just sensational. I mean, huge, whatever it is, holds 3,500 people. And we had people standing at the back. Yeah. And it was such a great fun show. It was a bit like a pop concert meets a panto. I remember the producers not being happy at me describing it like that. It's a musical. And I went, well, it is, but it's fun. And, and now if you said to someone, you want to go and see a pop concert meets a panto, you would go, yeah, because so many shows are like that, those jukebox musicals, as they're referred to. Yeah. So again, to be in Blackpool was just, childhood.
Were you put up in digs in Blackpool? Can you remember where it was?
I stayed in Fleetwood.
Yeah.
So yeah, as you look at the sea, So you're looking out to the piers. So Lytham's to your left.
The posh
and
end.
that's it. And then Fleetwood's to your right, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
so. I was right down there. I was right down. Lovely house that I stayed in, right on the front. It was, it was a real magical season. We were so ridiculously lucky. We were breaking all these box office records, and I'm looking at the wall of people that had played there. It was the Cannonballs, the Russ.
Still there.
Just amazing.
And Ross, I deliberately wanted to go down the Lancashire route because a lot of people from Lancashire watch this, but now there you are. You're out in LA, and I was watching your show reels, and by jingo, you have met some. You've hobnobbed with the rich and famous, haven't you? And I was watching you with Barbara Streisand, and I know you're friends with Michael Douglas as well, aren't you? And looking back, Ross, what would that kid who started out at 15, 16 be thinking? If somebody said, you know what, you're going to go to LA and you're going to. You do all the before you go to LA. You can do all these wonderful things on British telly, and then you're going to go out and you're going to meet everybody. I mean, you've met them all, haven't you?
I mean, it is crazy, and it's sometimes I'm sure this better than anyone when you're giving advice to people or even in sermons or whatever, that we do tend to often just keep looking forward all the time and wanting more and wanting better and bigger. And whenever if I give talks to kids out here in universities or colleges or schools, I always say that in my business you always seem to be looking up the ladder and going, oh, who's up there, and oh, they're doing that, and oh, they've got that, oh, and I didn't get that, or they did. And if you look down the ladder, there's just gajillions trying to do what we're trying to do. And I think it is nice. I think it's lovely to keep moving. I mean, I've always, that whole thing of with an act like mine, I've got to be a moving target. So keep going. It's that old Glaswegian: keep ducking and diving, keep dodging. But when it comes to reflecting in things, maybe that's it. Reflecting is a better way to look at things. And when I'm doing something like this, it's weird because you're saying these things, and it does. I am and always will be that daft kid from Glasgow. So no matter what happens, that's who's in here. And so when you say these things, I'm like, oh yeah, oh actually that is me or was me or whatever. So, but then you have a moment like Barbara Streisand, as you mentioned there, and when I sat there, and what had happened was I did an interview with her, and then 2 weeks later I got this phone call to say, got an interview with Barbara Streisand. And I said, oh no, you've got it wrong. I said, I interviewed her 2 weeks ago. And they went, no, she's got another part of the album she wants to talk about. And I said, okay, but we've just done it. And they went, no, Barbara said, she wants you to come and do it. I was like, what? What? And I went to see her, and during the interview, I pulled out this old 45 that I had. It was a French 45, and I brought it out. And it's funny if I said, what would Barbara now say to this Barbara? Just for a kind of fun thing. And then at the end of the interview, a couple of things happened. One was she said, "Ross, do you want me to sign that?" And I was like, yeah, but normally in these things, it's always very much don't ask for photographs, don't get things signed, etc. And I went, that would be amazing. And then she said, let's do a photograph. And I was like, and again, I'm looking around thinking somebody's going to jump in and go, no. But I thought she said it. And then I was like, okay, now, Miss Streisand is the ultimate perfectionist. And I'm thinking, well, she's going to have a photographer here or the light. She was like, I went, I'm looking for a photographer. She went, where's your phone? You got a phone? And I was like, yeah, get the phone out. Come on. I was like, wow. So we did all that. And then I said to her, I said, I didn't want to mention it to you last week. I said, but I was a kid and I went, this is funny, like almost like religious connection here. I went to see A Star Is Born in Glasgow, the movie A Star Is Born, not the first one of many, but the one that starred Barbara Streisand and Chris Christopherson. Yeah. And I took Rosemary Hunter, who was George Hunter, who was the minister at Scotstoun West Church in Glasgow. I took the vicar's daughter to go and see A Star Is Born. And I said to her, I fell in love that day with Esther Hoffman Howard, which was the name of her character in the movie.
Mm.
And I said, so this moment is really, really, really special.
Yeah.
And it was like she just gave me this hug, and it was just that lovely moment where, again, you realize, oh my goodness me, how lucky I am.
Mm.
And again, that lovely thing where I can look at the photograph and I can look at the album cover, and it just takes me to that day. But also it takes me to being the kid in Glasgow. It takes me going with Rosie to go and see the movie. And I think, those moments of reflection, and it makes you realize how lucky you are and how many moments, that I have to reflect on. Because for a lot of people, they don't.
No. Do you know what, Ross? This podcast stuff I've been doing came by chance, really. And you're my 40th interview, and I've managed to interview quite a few famous people. I don't know if it's the dog collar, but I asked the question, and people say, "Yeah, I'll do that." And when you went, "Yeah, I'll do it," like, Ross King's just said he'll do the golf. It's wonderful. But do you know what?
No, you've got to say, but the dog collar's not real. I just thought I'd go down that road.
These aren't real academic books. These are wallpaper.
I love it. You just thought, I'll be the very reverend. I got it on the internet. You know what?
I'm a dustman by trade.
Even better. You can just pick up that job as you go along.
But you know what? I was going to say that the people I've met, all of them, have been really humble, like yourself, really, really genuine and grateful for what you've got. And if I'm one of those gazillions kind of somewhere that, I think it's wonderful because with the greatest respect, you're not Barbra Streisand, but you're a lovely chap. You're very well known, and you've afforded me your time. And it's just wonderful. It really is. And I want to kind of, I've taken enough of your time, Ross.
It's all right. It's all right. There's no rush. We're okay. We're all good.
I want to ask you about your MBE because, it kind of comes full circle with the Meghan and Harry. And I just look at it, as somebody who is ordained, genuinely, I promise, comes on he swears allegiance to Her Majesty. I think the whole thing's been really sad, actually. And I think in some ways it's damaging. But tell me about your MBE, because I'm sure amongst all those stars and celebrities, you're a British guy at heart. I can tell.
Yeah. And very much so.
And that experience must have been incredible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to go back to when I was a kid and growing up in Glasgow, and obviously Dad, Salvation Army, as I said, Mum, Church of Scotland, and they did so much. I mean, I always remember even, I'd call them even from here, and I would say, "What have you done today?" And they would go, "Oh, we just went to visit some of the old folks." And I would figure it out and work it out that the old folks were younger than they were. And I used to think it was such a wonderful thing. Oh, we went to the home to visit old Mrs. So-and-so. And I'm thinking, they're younger than you are, Mum and Dad. And they were so lucky that they had a great life. And Dad, I'm sure, in many respects, similar to what I'm sure you go through, is that people would call Dad, in times of heartbreak or in times of need or whatever. And I always remember, because lived in a little council house in Knightswood in Glasgow, and the phone was in the hallway, and then you got a longer lead, and then you could tell it was going to be a long call because Dad would take the phone and then sit on the stairs. And then when you had to go up the stairs, you were like stepping over Dad. And then, or he would close the door, and then Mum would go, "Oh, it's a long call. It's Mrs. So-and-so. She's just lost so-and-so," or whatever. And that was a great grounding and a great upbringing, I think, of, people listening to other people's other problems. And so that made such a difference. But coming back around to where we were going with this, which was that because of the work that they did. So as a kid, when I would look at the Queen's, the birthday list or the New Year's honours list, and I always used to think, "Dad, why?" Or "Mum, why are you not getting something?" And Dad would say, "People like us, we don't get things like that." And I thought, "Oh, right." And so in my head, and even when I went into the business and, other friends were getting, I never, ever gave any of that a thought. So when it happened, when I got the call and then I got the letter and all the rest of it, it was surreal. And I do remember it, and I'll try not to get too emotional, that I just remember getting it and looking up and going, yep, there we go, Pops. You were wrong. For once in your life, you were wrong. You know, people like us, you know, are going to get something like that. And then on the day, you know, again, I often do the joke about, you know, I'd only ever seen the Queen on a stamp. So when I met her, I didn't know whether or not to shake her hand or lick the side of her face. So that happened. And you know, as I went in, and it was at Holyrood, which was even more magical because there I am in the palace in Edinburgh. Yeah. And I had, you know, and my family were there, you know, my sister and her husband and niece and nephew. And then Paul Cooney, the man who actually gave me my job at Radio Clyde, because I started there as a Saturday boy. He'd given me that. So, you know, it was like full circle and everyone was there. And I just remember waiting. And I had this weird moment where I just looked up and I could feel Mum and Dad. And then your name's announced. And then you walk forward and then it's, you know, Her Majesty. And it was the second time that I'd met her. And the first time, very quickly, I was doing a gig in Hyde Park. It was VE Day, a celebration of VE Day, not the original.
She'd be a comedian.
She was very far back. They built a little sort of dais for her, and she was way back, and put a heater in and all the rest of it. So at the end of it, we get taken around to meet everyone. And I thought it would be like a royal variety show. We'd all be standing in a line and all, but it was very informal. And then someone said, "Oh, you know, would you like to meet Her Majesty?" I said, "Oh, I'd love to." And as I literally turned and she was there. And so of course you have to wait till she speaks to you, and you know, you call her Her Majesty initially, then you can call her Ma'am. And so she went, "Oh, there we are. Oh, there we are. It was good show." And I went, "Oh, thank you, Your Majesty." And all I could think of was how far back she was. This is in Hyde Park. And I said, "Ma'am, you were very far back." I said, "Could you see all right?" And she said, "I was so far back, I could have stayed at home and opened a window."
Very good.
and then, you know, and again, it's that funny because you go, "That's great. That's very funny." But you don't laugh as much as you should do. You feel like, I'm going to be very polite, Mom. And then when I got the MBE, when I was standing there and go forward, and then she said, "You've come a long way." And I said, "Oh, thank you, Your Majesty. In my career or just today?" And she said, "Well, both." And I said, "Well, thank you." And then she said, "You know, do you travel back and forth a lot?" And I said, "Yeah, 4 or 5 times a year." I said, "But obviously, you know, I'm here for this." And she went, "You traveled specially for this from Los Angeles?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "Man, it might just be another day for you gonging people. But I said, for me and my family, this is like a once in a lifetime thing. You know, it's a big thing." So, and it was funny because she laughed because my sister, I've got a wonderful photograph of the Queen. You know, when the Queen smiles, it is just the most, she's got this amazing warm smile. And when it's there in front of you, and, you know, you're thinking again, you know, oh my goodness me, it's the Queen. And I think, you know, no matter whether you're a royalist or anything, you know, the Queen is a remarkable woman, you know, and especially everything that she must be going through just now. Yeah. Is just, you know, phenomenal. So I just felt so blessed on that day and so fortunate and so lucky. Again, you know, as we're saying, to reflect on things, you know, again, just, again, lucky boy.
Yeah. Ross, it's been wonderful. It's been an absolute joy listening to your trip down memory lane. And, you know, I'm right, as we say in Burnley, I'm right chuffed for you, lad, because it's cracking. It's a great story. It's a great journey from beginning to end, and long may it continue. Do you think you'll stay in LA till you pop your clogs? Or
well, you know, I always say that whole thing. I'm so fortunate at this stage of my life that I've got, you know, enough money, you know, for the rest of my life if I die next Tuesday. So now that you've said that, pop my clogs, wow, wouldn't it be funny if this was it?
Please don't die next Tuesday.
I know, exactly, yeah. Oh, it's a premonition. What happened? Look at this. Look at this. Let's look at this. Exactly. Have a word. Have a word.
He really was a vicar.
Now, but I want to ask you then. So, tell me about hospital radio. Did you have any jingles, or were you you hadn't been ordained by then, or had you?
No, it's a long time ago. I was only a young guy, and there was not even a playlist. It was just I did this beginning, the middle, and the end. But I did get told off because I was playing some song I can't remember, and I said down the mic, "Come on now. If you're not feeling too well, let's swing those colostomy bags in the air." And some ward sister rang me up saying, "You cannot be saying this on radio, on the hospital radio." I didn't think anybody was listening, but there was a few people. But yeah, I loved it. I loved hospital radio. I used to record it and play it back at home, and I think I've still got a few cassettes somewhere. But
wow.
Yeah.
You should go back into it again, because you've got such a wonderful, warm personality and a lovely charm. So you should definitely. I mean, the rockin' Raven Rev or something. I mean, I think we could build it all up.
Well, if you want to be my agent, Ross, if you want to take me out to LA, the weather's been absolutely lousy.
Well, listen, you're the one with the contacts. Do something about it.
Ross, it's absolutely been fantastic, and we send our love to you from Lancashire and England, and congratulations on all your achievements, and thanks so much for coming on the Godcast. It's been enjoyable.
Thank you. I mean, I looked at the list of people you've had on it. I'm the only person I've never heard of.
No, I've not heard of you either.
So well done. Congratulations to you. It's brilliant.
Thank you. God bless, and we'll see you again.
Take care. Thank you. Cheers, Alex.